Dozens die in Yemen as violence escalates. This just as the country's president, Ali Abdullah Saleh, returns home from Saudi Arabia 3 months after surviving an assassination attempt. As defecting units clash with forces loyal to the regime, is Yemen heading for civil war? And is there any mileage left in the Gulf's mediation efforts? This is Inside Story. Hello there, welcome to the programme. I'm Nick Clark. The main opposition protest camp in Saleh, known as Change Square, has come under heavy fire and sniper attack in the hours since President Saleh returned, calling for a truce and a ceasefire. Many are reported to have been killed and others wounded in the attack. The bloodshed reinforces fears that Saleh's return signals the beginning of a concerted effort to crush his rivals. The United States has conceded his return was a surprise, urging him to initiate a full transfer of power and arrange for presidential elections before the end of this year. Mohammed Val has more.
Many in Yemen and abroad had doubted the possibility of his return, but Ali Abdullah Saleh is back. And the prospects for a stable Yemen are grimmer than ever before, as government troops launched an attack on anti-Saleh protesters in the capital Sana'a. Clashes have been reported as well between army units loyal to Saleh and others opposing him, with heavy weapons being used and sniper fire around the town centre. Al Jazeera sources estimate the number of people killed since Saleh's return on Friday as more than 30. Saleh's prolonged stay in Saudi Arabia for treatment gave false hopes to some that he might relinquish power and allow a peaceful transition in Yemen. But even his absence did not lead to stability, as loyalists in the army, led by his son, continued to defend the regime. The crisis has reached a dangerous level when pro-revolution units in the army shifted from passive to active opposition. Upon his return, President Saleh called for a cessation of violence and for a negotiated settlement. On the ground, however, it's not evident he's passed any orders of that nature to his troops. But Saleh's sudden return did not only surprise his opponents in Yemen. The Americans who've been involved behind the scenes in attempts to secure a smooth transition of power in the country have expressed their surprise as well. Just a few days back, US Foreign Secretary Hillary Clinton met with Saudi Foreign Minister Prince Saud Al Faisal, but the Americans seem to suggest that the Saudis have not informed them of the imminent return of Saleh. Anti-Saleh Yemenis accuse both Riyadh and Washington of supporting the regime in Sana'a as a crucial ally in the fight against Al-Qaeda. They accuse the West of adopting double standards by supporting the pro-democracy uprising in Libya, but not in Yemen. And they believe that Saleh's return will only plunge the country into more chaos. Mohammed Val, Al Jazeera, for Inside Story.
All right, so that's the current position. Let's take it on. Joining us now are our guests. In London, we have Mohammed Katabi, a member and spokesman of the opposition's National Yemeni Council. He was formerly advisor to the Prime Minister and Yemen's ambassador to Lebanon and Cyprus. Here in Doha, we have Amin al-Himyari. He's a Yemeni political analyst and a professor of English literature at Qatar University. And finally, in New York, Bernard Heikel is joining us. He's a professor of Near Eastern Studies at Princeton University. Welcome to you all, gentlemen. Before we really get stuck into this, let's just lay out what is at stake here, just how important all this is. If civil war breaks out, how serious is it for Yemen, for the region and for the world at large? Bernard Heikel, if I could start with you.
Well, I think that if civil war were to break out in Yemen, and I think we're seeing the beginnings of a civil war right now, it would be catastrophic, certainly for Yemenis. You have a country with about 24 million people, with extremely high rates of ownership of weapons and guns. The country apparently has 40 million pieces of weaponry, and it's extremely divided internally. I think you would have a massive influx of, or outflow of refugees, rather, into the Gulf countries and into Saudi Arabia. You would have a Somalia-like situation with Al-Qaeda present. I mean, it would be a real catastrophe. And the country is strategically located at the entrance of the Red Sea. You have piracy around the corner in Somalia. I think this would be a real disaster.
Okay, a real catastrophe, a real disaster. Mohammed Katabi, opposition spokesman, given everything that we've just heard from Bernard Heikel in New York, given that, why would Saudi Arabia sanction Saleh's return, given that violence seems to be on the increase? Why would they have just let him come back?
Nick, first I would like to correct. My name is Kubati, not Kutabi. Kubati, the B before the T. Okay, Kubati. That's actually, your question is the one which is, I mean, everybody else is raising, you know. We have known that the Saudis, at least, they have said that they have hold on Saleh so that he proceeds forward with the Gulf Cooperative Council initiative. But his return actually doesn't mirror such a stance, if it was their stance really. Today we have heard the GCC, ministers, foreign ministers in New York. They have come out with a statement asking Saleh to immediately sign the initiative, agreement of the initiative. But I'm just, again, this raises a lot of brows. The man was with them there, and they had the influence to pressurize him to sign that agreement, but they have left him come out. Again, that raises the question. People think that to which extent was actually Saleh a sort of somebody who is causing a lot of awkwardness in the situation? Was he a liability to stay in Saudi Arabia and they drove him out so that they could take such a position? But the thing I would like to comment on that, Bernard has said that this is a very catastrophic situation if war breaks and Yemen just disintegrates. The catastrophe is not only on Yemen. I would like to reiterate that the Saudis will pay a lot for that. As Bernard have said, I mean, are the Saudis prepared to, accept the flow of hundreds of thousands of Yemenis into the borders where at one time the area which they're going to overflow in were disputed? Just only 10 years ago we have came across such an agreement which Saleh actually sometimes uses to pressurize the Saudis and tell them it was him who has agreed on that border agreement.
So Mr. Kubati, let me just bring in Ayman Al-Himyari.
Just one sentence, if you don't mind.
Okay, go on.
Yes, we want from our brothers in Saudi Arabia and the GCC, we don't want this pure froth. We want action. We want them at least they could have frozen the man's asset and pressurized him to sign that agreement.
Okay, so Ayman Al-Himyari, what do you think is the Saudi motivation behind this?
Well, I don't blame Saudis for not detaining the president, because the right thing for the president is to be in his country. And it's up to Yemenis, to decide whether to prosecute him or to release him if he's innocent. I mean, this is the right situation. So this is one thing. The other thing, what we can blame Saudis is not to take actions against the regime as a whole, because they have proposed these initiatives and it didn't take place. And Saleh has promised to sign it 3 times. And then this is a sign that he does not keep any promise. And it's a sign for the international community that this regime, is not trustworthy. So they have to take legal actions like the one in Libya or other countries. The situation in Yemen is a real test for the international community, not only for Saudis and for the GCC countries. I mean, the regime has used all kind of weapons against civilians. He has used the air fighters, and the revolutionaries in the squares are committed to keep the revolution peaceful. Otherwise, every Yemeni has his own weapon, and they know how to fight, and they can defend themselves well.
So, Mr. Himyari, President Saleh returned holding the so-called dove of peace, as he put it, and an olive branch. You don't think that's genuine at all?
I think President Saleh has, surprises many people. You cannot tell what he's going to do and what kind of decision is he going to make. He has returned with the mentality of revenge, and we have noticed that from the first day of arrival. He called people for ceasefire, but fighting is taking place and expanding everywhere in Sana'a. So what does that mean?
Okay, so in that case, Mr. Kubati, one could assume that President Saleh's return would mean that the opposition movement has failed?
In which way has the opposition movement has failed? We have got there hundreds of thousands of protesters in the streets across more than 17 Yemeni governorates, and they have been there protesting peacefully, unarmed, for the past 8 months. I think they have held the admiration of the whole world. It's just the international community has not actually was not up to its obligation. It didn't take its obligations, and the region also around us have not yet. They have let them down. You know, as far as we have seen that this regime has been committing atrocities, criminalities which has never been seen anywhere in the world, and the whole world is just, you know, continuing with this silence and paying lip service and rhetoric towards the man has got to sign the initiative and so on. But we have not seen real action or deeds from the international community. As far as the protesters and the revolutionaries, they have gone on over for 8 months now, peacefully, and in a place where, as Bernard has said, there are more than 60 million pieces of arms there. They could have easily, if they wanted just to confront the situation by violence and killing and so on, it could have been easy. That's the true essence of the revolution. These people are peaceful protesters.
Forgive me for jumping in, but I just want to put this to you. Do you think it will remain peaceful? Because it's certainly within Mushin's capabilities with the armoured division that he has at hand. He's very capable of upping the stakes. So how long can he take this attack on on the opposition movement?
The question is when are we going to move to that sort of scenario? And as Bernard said, there is a danger there that such a scenario, if we move towards that sort of cycle, then who can hold the situation from breaking up into a Somali-like scenario? And then those are the dangers. And that's why we ask the international community and our brothers in the GCC area, especially our Saudi brothers, to intervene while there is at least time to put a lid on this explosive situation. If they left it, yes, we might move towards widespread, full-fledged civil war, and then the dangers, it's not only Yemenis who are going to lose, it's everybody is a loser then.
All right, well, as we've alluded to already, neighbouring Gulf states have tried repeatedly to broker a deal for Saleh to step down. He agreed 3 times to earlier drafts of the deal, only to back down at the very last minute. And the Gulf plan has 4 main points: that Ali Abdullah Saleh should go and transfer his powers to his deputy. And secondly, that elections should be held at the end of this year. Thirdly, the formation of a unity government chaired by the opposition. And finally, the formation of a military committee to restructure the army. In return for all of this, Saleh would be granted immunity from prosecution. But to date, of course, he's not signed the deal and indeed seems very much reluctant to do so. Bernard Heikel, where are we with this proposal, do you think? The GCC deal is really a Saudi initiative, but he was sent back by the Saudis, so it's hard to see how it can work out now, isn't it?
That's right. I mean, I think that he has come back, President Saleh has come back with an vengeful mood. You see, we're also, when discussing him, we're not just discussing the one person. We're talking about a family that is in control of key units of the armed forces. His son is in charge of the Republican Guard. The nephew is in charge of internal security forces. These are incredibly well-trained units of the Yemeni army and trained largely by the United States to fight Al-Qaeda. And now these units are being used to fight his domestic enemies, other Yemeni forces that have split with him. And the other problem, incidentally, in Yemen is also the fact that you have the demonstrators and the people who are genuine revolutionaries who want change and reform in the country. And they have recently been joined in the last few months by people who are allied to President Saleh, namely General Ali Mohsen and the Ahmar brothers. Now, these two other groups are complicit with Saleh and have ruled with him in a very corrupt and nepotistic way, even though now they are on the side of the demonstrators. And the problem lies in that there are no good options between these 3 contending forces. Neither Saleh is a good person, nor his family, to rule Yemen, nor is Ali Mohsen, nor are the Ahmars. So the leadership, the people who have the most weapons and who are likely to fight each other in this civil war, are all not acceptable to a majority of Yemenis.
And this is the problem, isn't it, Mr. Himyari? Because even at the best of times, there was a real mess in Yemen. Everybody's armed, as we've been talking about. Now you've got the Houthi problem in the north. The south wants to split. Al-Qaeda active in the south, indeed, taking over towns and areas down there. It really is a very big problem. How you can unravel all of this.
Yeah, I think most of these problems were created during the last 2 or 3 decades, okay, by this regime. Okay, he is trying to manipulate these situations in order to exploit the West and to exploit the neighboring countries, to get financial aids, to get military support for his regime. But in fact, he's using all these just to build his own family army. He has changed all the country into a business corporation for his family and for his tribe. But fortunately, now the tribe is divided. Okay, half of the tribe is supporting the revolution. Okay, but I want to correct the misunderstanding that some people or some Yemenis and some people around the world think that the revolution is just to replace Ali Saleh by Ali Muhsin or by Hamid al-Ahmar or Sadiq al-Ahmar, which is a wrong notion, in fact. The revolution is against the way the whole country is governed, not against a person or a family. So we want to change the way and the whole regime of governing the whole country. We want to change it into a democratic state.
But that's hard to see how that can happen when the people, I mean, you've got 2 factions fighting here and they're both from the elite. And so who would come up to replace them?
Yeah, but they have announced to the protesters in the square that they don't have, they don't have any ambition in taking the power, and they have announced that clearly. And they have given promises not to take the power. And as a proof of that, General Ali Muhsin has told the mediators that sent by Ali Saleh and his son to come back to dialogue and negotiation, say, please arrange for a plane to take us all, from the country and leave Yemenis choose their own government.
Mohammed Kubati, we have to be careful here, don't we? Because we can talk about this wholesale opposition movement, but the fact is we have seen thousands and thousands of Saleh supporters out in the streets. On Friday, for example, when he came back, there was a huge show of support for him there.
Well, Nick, a regime which has been ruling for 33 years and with all its patrimonial schemes which has been, hatched over the past 17 years, easily it can get out 5 to 10,000 or 15,000. They could easily, we know that they have got security forces and troops which amount to about 20 to 30,000. They could get them into the streets, but that cannot be at all compared with the masses which are getting out in all more than 17 provinces of Yemen, hundreds of thousands of people. There is no comparison at all in that. You see, after all, and then we are not actually asking for a sort of a change whereby only the opposition or some group comes in. We are trying to get a new democratic country ruled on basis of civilian rule, whereby there would be elections, there would be a democracy, there would be participatory politics and so on. We are just against this family, the man and his family, who have been trying to push these patrimonial schemes, and this man has no any credibility. We cannot go on. As you have seen, he is quite unpredictable, he is quite devious, he is untrustworthy. Suddenly he appears there and he is now asking, he says he wants a truce. What truce? Between whom and whom? Actually, we are facing a situation whereby the units which Bernard have said had been trained to fight Al-Qaeda or the terrorists. They are now actually going, hitting and killing people in the streets. Truce between whom and whom? It's he who is pushing all these atrocities against human rights and all these war crimes. And we want the world actually to stand and say, come on, enough is enough. This cannot continue. Because I think the man gets the wrong message. Because if the way that the West and our brothers in the Arab world have treated the other regimes, whereby they have asked for freezing of assets, embargo on weapons and so on, such measures have not been taken against this regime, Ali Abdullah Saleh and and his family. So he understands that the world has given him green light to continue with this, killings he has been doing over the past 7 months.
Okay,
Actually,
let me bring in Bernard Heikel. Mr. Kobati, we're running out of time, I'm afraid, so I just need to bring in Bernard Heikel. What are your thoughts? I mean, imagine this scenario that Saleh is gone, that the protest movement works to that extent. But what about the position after that, with all the problems that we've talked about, with the Houthis in the north, the problems in the south, Al-Qaeda spreading? Are you convinced that the opposition movement would be able to create the environment that would ensure a peaceful transition to a new government?
Well, I mean, that's a good question, and I don't know whether, there is an answer to it. What I do know, though, is that with Saleh in power, you will have chaos for certain. And I suspect what he has done with Saudi Arabia specifically is that he has promised them that he can bring back stability to the country, which is Saudi Arabia's principal concern. It does not want to see Yemen explode into a civil war and then have all the problems that will spill into Saudi Arabia. So
Nick,
the Saudis
can I have a sentence, please?
Yeah, by all means, Mr. Kobati, in you come.
Yeah. It's just we want our brothers in the GCC area and our friends in the West and everywhere. They have got to learn new ways of dealing with these countries which are now revolutionaries. They don't have to look for one person or a new dictator. They have got to learn how to get engaged with institutions. We are trying to build institutions, not a person by himself or a family. Institutions have got to rule and come out, and that's the only way forward. And there are abilities there. We have been, for the past 17 years, trying to get those institutions, and nobody's helping us.
Okay, let's throw that to Bernard Heikel.
I mean, I agree with Mr. Kobati. I think that the problem is that, this man, Saleh, has destroyed all the institutions in Yemen. And when the Saudis look at Yemen, they really are trying to find a strong man who can bring stability to the country. The problem is that there is no one other than Saleh in their mind, and I think mistakenly, who can do this. And I think they will learn a very hard lesson when they realize that this man is going to bring chaos and, in fact, not be able to bring stability to the country, and that his promises are really ones that should not be believed and trusted. And the Saudis know this in their hearts, but somehow can't pass on to a new policy, a new set of imaginative ideas about how to deal with Yemen.
Yeah, Mr. Himyari, do you see a political solution to this? Do you think the Gulf Initiative is dead in the water? Do you think there could still be progress on that?
Yeah, I think it is still can be alive again, because Saudis have been key players in the Yemeni politics. But what I want to mention here is that I think they should revise their strategic plan, if they have one, in Yemen. Yemen has never been stable during the last 3 decades. How many civil wars we had in Yemen? And the last one is the Houthis. Okay, did they ask themselves who created these Houthis? We have never had Houthis before. Okay, it's the regime who created them, who supported them in order to exploit the Saudis. Okay, and he led the country into different civil wars. So I think the Saudis should realize that this regime is a dangerous regime for themselves and for the region, and the only solution for the whole region is to change the regime and to build, or to help Yemenis build, a democratic state.
All right, we'll leave it there. We've run out of time, but we appreciate this. As ever, we always need another half an hour to discuss this, but appreciate that very much. Thanks to our guests in London, Mohammed Kobati, here in Doha, Amin Al-Himyari, and in New York, Bernard Heikel. Thanks very much indeed to all of you. And thanks for watching this edition of Inside Story. Always keen to hear from you. Just email any suggestions and thoughts to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. From me, Nick Clark, it's goodbye.